Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm Paige. I'm an addict. And yeah, we're picking up on page 20, middle of the page, how many times? Now, I will say I don't got a lot of time to get through all that I got to get through, but immediately I'm starting us off with a tangent. Immediately. I don't know if you guys are aware, in North America, we celebrate Mother's Day. It's a different date that's celebrated in the UK. And May 11th. 1935 is a significant date in our history. See, Mother's Day of 1935, May 11th, the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson, was in the Mayflower Hotel. He was broke, his reputation was ruined, he was discredited, and he heard the call from the bar. He didn't know how he was going to pay his bill, but he hears, the laughter, and you can hear the ice clinking on the glass, clink, clink, clink. The obsession was on him. And in that moment, he realized that in order to save himself, he had to carry this message to another alcoholic. He picks up the phone, goes to the other side of the hotel lobby, picks up the phone, and he makes a series of phone calls. And that series of phone calls leads him to Dr. Bob. Now, they don't get to meet today. Dr. Bob was hammered. He had done that thing. I'm sure none of you guys have messed up a Mother's Day, but he got absolutely tanked and showed up with a big potted plant. I like to imagine that he stole it and just went upstairs and passed out. And so, but from Bill Wilson's willingness to carry the message that he had to another sufferer, led the formation of Alcoholics Anonymous, and from that formation, Cocaine Anonymous. And in that moment, our lives hung in the balance. None of those calls, if that call doesn't get made, if none of those series of phone calls gets connected, there's no call forwarding, there's no call waiting, there's no answering machines. Man, we would not be here today. And in one of the series of phone calls, he calls up this guy by the name of Walter Reverend Tunks, and who calls up Norman Shepherd, who calls up Henrietta Seiberling. And Bill Wilson is like, man, I'm a drunk from New York. Do you know any alcoholic I could help? And Henrietta Seiberling says, this is an answered prayer. You see, they had a prayer group for Dr. Bob, and it's a reminder that your sobriety is nothing less than an answered prayer. And the responsibility that we have to help other people. But to help other people, I've got to understand the nature of my illness. I didn't plan for that segue to be that natural. Let's look at that. So let's have a look at the misunderstandings of what it means to have the illness of addiction. It says, how many times have people said to us, I can take it or leave it alone? Why can't he? Spoilers, the obsession of the mind. Why don't you drink like a gentleman or quit? I will tell you, I tried to smoke crack like a lady behind the dumpster. My pinky was up and everything. But why couldn't I do it? The allergy of the body. That fellow can't handle his liquor. Again, the allergy. Why don't you try beer and wine? Lay off the hard stuff. Again, the allergy of the body. You see, anyone here ever been told some of those things? Anyone here ever try some of those things? Switching our substances, trying to switch around, and man, the result was always the same. It says, his willpower must be weak. He could stop if he wanted to. She's such a sweet girl. I should think he'd stop for her sake. And what we're pointing to is the obsession of the mind. Did I try to stay sober, get sober, based on willpower or fear or the love of somebody in my life, and none of it was sufficient? The doctor told him that if he ever drank again, it would kill him, but there he is, all lit up again. Again, the obsession of the mind. So when we look at what describes us as addicts, there are two symptoms that we have to look at. The allergy. Once I start, can I control the amount that I take every single time? Hard nope. Hard nope. And when I am sober, do I have the ability to stay sober on my own power? And the answer is, if we're hanging out today on this delightful Sunday, the answer is probably not. Because you probably have better things to do. You know what I mean? I did not try everything, but everything that I tried failed. So it says, now these are commonplace observations on drinkers, on users, which we hear all the time. Back of them is a world of ignorance and misunderstanding. And we hear that same world of ignorance and misunderstanding in the rooms. I don't understand what it means to be an addict. I think I should just call before I pick up. I think I just need to go to meetings. I just think I don't want it enough. Do you know what I mean? I think I just got to play the tape to the end, and I don't understand what is wrong with me. So even that misunderstanding of what it means to be an addict, we have those as addicts. So how could we possibly be upset as people who are able to drink like a lady? There's probably fewer people that are able to smoke crack like a lady, but those people that are able to pick it up and put it down, man, that they have a completely different reaction to substances and a completely different reaction to abstinence than we do. And it says, we see that these expressions refer to people whose reactions are very different from ours. Now we're going to have a look at 3 types of drinkers, and we can extrapolate to 3 types of drug users. And this is the first, moderate drinkers. So, by the way, probably not any of us, just if you're wondering. It says, have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely. If they have a good reason for it, they can take it or leave it alone. Does that sound familiar? Probably not. These are people that have no allergy, no obsession. It does nothing to them. It does nothing for them. I don't drink a lot of pop. I don't know what it's called in the UK, but pop or soda or Coca-Cola or you know what I mean? I don't drink a lot of it. But if I go out to a restaurant, I like to get a pop. I can take it, I can leave it alone. You know what I mean? It does nothing to me, it does nothing for me. Then it says, then we have a certain type of hard drinker. So this is type 2, a hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. If a sufficiently strong reason, so we can pause and ask ourselves, have I had reasons that should have been sufficiently strong? Should I have had good reasons to either control my use or to stay sober? Things like ill health. Did I ever have any health consequences? Falling in love. Now, to be fair, falling in lust is close enough for our purposes. You guys don't, not you guys, you are hopeless romantics. You would never. Falling in love, change of environment. I moved from Calgary, Alberta to Lethbridge, Alberta. You'd be surprised. I'm just as much of a crackhead there, and it's more windy. That's the only difference, change of environment. Or the warning of a doctor. Did I ever have a doctor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a treatment center, a detox, our loved ones? Did I ever have sufficiently strong reason to either stop or control it? Or what should have been sufficiently strong? I point that out because the reasons we have to stay sober, the reasons we have to get sober are not sufficient for people like us, people who have this illness. So it says, becomes operate, this man can also stop or moderate, although he may find it difficult and troublesome and even need medical attention. And my experience is I did not try everything that there is to get sober and stay sober. But my experience is everything that I tried failed. I could have put it down for a little bit. Now, I'll be honest with you, I was suicidal most of that time. I point that out because if you're here today and you're like, I'm fine, I don't need any steps, I'm happy to be here, happy to be sober, I'm fine, I point that out because suicidal ideation is not a solution to addiction. And here in Cocaine Anonymous, what we have is a solution. And if left untreated for long enough, it is only a matter of time before I end my life or I go back to the first drink or the first drug or the first, mind-altering substance. And so have I had reasons that should have been sufficient? And did they fail? Did I try ways and means to moderate my drinking or moderate my drug use and to stay sober on my own power? And did that not work? And so it says, what about the real alcoholic, the real addict? This is type 3. He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. But at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. So there's a thing that happens as I'm talking about the moderate drinker and I'm talking about the hard drinker. We immediately think, no, that must be me. Because back in 86, I had 3 drinks like a lady. And back in 94, I was able to do 1 line of Coke like a lady. Just spoilers, nothing in my life has ever been ladylike. Back in 2007, I was able to do that. I was able to pop some pills responsibly. You know what I mean? We think of the exception, not the rule. But there might have been a time in our life where we maybe were moderate drinkers, moderate users, where we maybe then crossed a line into hard drug use. But if we look at our current experience, none of that prevents me from being an addict. For some of us, there is a progression into the severity of this illness. Not for me. I got this thing hard and fast, and it hit quick. Woo! I was in trouble from the get-go. But for many of us, that is our experience. What is my current experience? Is my current experience once I pick up, that I lose all control. And what we're referring to is the physical allergy. Again, control is in reference to the allergy. And if you're wondering what control looks like, honey, sweetie, Pookie Pie, I'm going to go to the pub. Sorry, I'm in the UK. We're going to go to the pub. And I'm going to have 3 drinks, just 3 drinks, and I'll be home by 9. And do you know what they do? They go to the pub and they have 3 drinks and they're home by 9 and their pants are dry and they've got both their shoes and they didn't take all their rent money and blow it on blow. You know what I'm saying? They do that every single time. Does that sound familiar? I have a feeling if we're hanging out today, probably not. So it says, here is the fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. Again, we're pointing to the allergy, that inability to control it once I start. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking, while using. Now, the absurd and tragic is self-explanatory, but the incredible, it's more like the Hulk rather than, the Incredible Hulk, as opposed to, I went on a 3-week bender and somehow I ended up with an EGOT and a Nobel Peace Prize. You know what I'm saying? That never happened. I showed up with wet pants, a whole bunch. That happened. Some of you guys are like not relating, and I'm like, oh goodness, what's it like to be a member of the Dry Pants Club? I had to have the spirit of the universe that came into my life to get me to be a member, so kudos to you. So it says he is a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And an interesting thing is, there's a theory that story, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, was Robert Louis Stevenson's allegory for his own illness of addiction. And you see in that story, it's set up like a bit of a mystery, but essentially there is this gentleman by the name of Dr. Jekyll, and he creates this potion, and it's interesting, it's a powder. He creates this potion, and that potion turns him into this Mr. Hyde, where he gets to do all the bad things that he wants to do, and he feels so good doing it. But what happens is when he takes the potion and he turns into this Mr. Hyde, he starts to do things he doesn't want to do. There starts to be consequences, and those things start piling up. He starts to cross lines that he knows he shouldn't cross. And so our Dr. Jekyll, he says, that's it. I'm never going to do it again. And his real problem is not that the potion turns him into this Mr. Hyde. His real problem is that he cannot stop himself from taking the potion. Does that sound familiar? That is our real problem. That I can't stop myself from taking that substance which turns me into somebody that I don't want to be, but it was the only thing that gave me relief. Now, if we have any people, do we have any people here from Scotland? Because Scotland, my guys. What up? I got you for your next time you guys do a quiz. I got you. So Robert Louis Stevenson, his grandfather designed every lighthouse in Scotland. I got you for that fun fact. That's a good one. Now, it's a beautiful metaphor. You see, when I come here as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But who I am called to grow into and transform into is the lighthouse. To shine that light so bright for those that are in the darkness, for those who do not know the way out, for those who cannot find safe passage. I don't need to, codependently chase down the ships, but I need to let them know I'm there. I need to reach out to them and let them know where safe passage is. It says he is seldom mildly intoxicated. I want to point out that when we are in our active addiction, when we are using, when we are drinking, is our experience that we're rarely a little tipsy, or is our experience that we are more or less insanely drunk, that I am more or less out of my mind? Is that my experience, that when I am drinking, when I am using, it says his disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature but little. Who I am when I am using is not who I am when I am sober. It's not who I want to be. It's not who I need to be. I'm doing things I never wanted to do. I'm crossing lines I never wanted to cross. I'm breaking hearts I never wanted to break. I'm betraying trust that meant everything to me. I'm losing things far more than just my shoes and my pants, but those two. I'm losing my hopes. I'm losing my goals. I'm losing my dreams. I'm losing my relationships. I'm losing my dignity. I'm losing my sense of self. I'm losing things. It says, he may be one of the finest fellows in the world, yet let him drink for a day and he frequently becomes disgustingly, even dangerously antisocial. And now what we're going to talk about is the mental obsession. He has a positive genius, which it's about time we recognize my genius. I'm just kidding. Positive genius for getting drunk. For getting tight just means drunk, or getting high in our case, at exactly the wrong moment, particularly when some important decision must be made or engagement kept. See, I don't know about you. I'm the sort of person that will get loaded 2 days before the court date. I'm this and miss it. I know what it is like to get high right before a job interview that would have turned things around. Do you guys know what that's like? All I needed to do was stay sober. All I needed to do was not take that first one. And I take it anyways. I can't stop myself from taking it. Once I take it, the allergy, it's got me. It says he is often perfectly sensible and well-balanced concerning everything. Now, to be fair, I don't relate to that. But it's saying in other areas of our life, we have good sense, we have common sense, we're able to show up like a reasonable person. Except liquor, except drugs. But in that respect, he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. Is that my experience? Am I going to lie to you about it? Am I going to do whatever I can to protect it? Man, it's the only thing that ever gave me any sort of relief. How could I let that go? It says he often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. Oh, how did you know? Thank you. I'm just kidding. Never me. The only time I ever thought I had potential was when I was reading about that potential alcoholic. That's the only time I thought I had potential. But it says he often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses these gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself. Was I building it up again and again and again? But then I pull it down. He pulls a structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. I'm going through that cycle where I say, that's it. I'm never going to drink again. I'm never going to use again. And I start to rebuild my life. I start to rebuild trust. I start to rebuild career, finances, health. I start to rebuild it. But a day, a week, a month, several months later, I get a thought, and that thought tells me this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. I just got to get it out of my system. Or man, it's a case of the suddenlies. I got a drink in my hand. I got a line in front of me. I'm popping a pill, and I almost don't know how it happened. You know what I'm saying? And I go back to it again and again and again. And I'm tearing that structure down again and again and again. I build it up and I tear it down. I build it up and I tear it down. And I cannot stop myself from going back to that first one. It says he is the fellow who goes to bed so intoxicated he ought to sleep the clock around. Yet early the next morning he searches madly for the bottle he misplaced the night before. If he can afford it, he may have liquor concealed all over his house to be certain no one gets his entire supply away from him to throw down the waste pipe. Do I know what it's like to once I go, man, I'm going and I can't stop? And do I know what it's like? Am I that person who had hiding places where I kept it a secret? You know what I mean? And it says, as matters grow worse, he begins to use a combination of high-powered sedative and liquor to quiet his nerves so he can get to work. I'll tell you, I was real interested in cocktails, and I'm not talking about the alcoholic drink or the movie with Tom Cruise. I'm talking about that cocktail. If I do a little bit of crack and I get a little too up, then I can level it off with some alcohol. You know what I mean? I'll take some of this, take some of that. You know what I mean? Those cocktails, where it's like may cause drowsiness. Don't take with alcohol. I'll take 4, and I'll take that with a little drink. Why, thank you. It gets a little out of control, do a little upper, you know what I mean? Cocktails, right? Do I relate to that? Man, do I relate to starting to use substances I said I would never use? Do I relate to using substances in a way that I said I would never use them? No, that's for other people, but I'm starting to do it. That's for street people. That's for addicts. And I start doing that. Can I relate to that? And it says, then comes the day when he simply cannot make it and gets drunk all over again. Perhaps he goes to a doctor who gives him morphine or some sedative with which to taper off. Then he begins to appear at hospitals and sanitariums. Whenever we talk about sanitariums, think treatment centers. And what we see on page 21, page 22, with the real alcoholic, the real addict, is a progression. If you relate to the first part, but you don't relate to going in and out of detox, in and out of treatment, in and out of hospitals, but I can relate to once I start, I cannot stop. And when I want to stay sober, I cannot stay sober. The end of that paragraph is inevitable. Going from rehab to rehab, detox to detox, treatment center to treatment center, hospital, emergency room, A&E to A&E. I had to remember the UK word for it. Let me know if it's not A&E and I'm referencing somebody else. I got it. Thank you. Psych wards. Do you know what I mean? And there is a progression that happens, and it is getting worse and worse and worse. And the crux of what it means, the basis of what it means to have this illness, is no control. Once I start, I cannot stop, and no choice. When I am sober, I have the obsession of the mind that takes me back again and again and again to that first drink, despite the fact that it is ruining my life. It says this is by no means a comprehensive picture of the true alcoholic, as our behavior patterns vary. But this description should identify him roughly. Anyone here feel roughly identified? We're hoping that we're hoping we're feeling a little bit called out, a little bit like, ooh, Bill, were you reading my mail? How did you know? And so it says, why does he behave like this? Yeah, you guys are relating. Why does he behave like this? If hundreds of experiences have shown him that one drink, one line, one pill, one hoot, one whatever, one means that another debacle with all its attendant suffering and humiliation. Why is it that he takes that one drink? Why can't he stay on the water wagon? Why can't I just stay sober? Why can't I just go to meetings and not use? Why can't I do it? What has become of the common sense and the willpower that he sometimes displays with respect to other matters? And what we're pointing to is the obsession of the mind. The obsession of the mind is why. That is why I can't just stay sober, despite in this moment, I guarantee almost everyone in this Zoom room can say, yes, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt I cannot ever safely use again. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I have this allergy. I know that there will never be a time when I can ever safely use any mind-altering substance ever again. And yet the obsession of the mind means we will. If I don't find this solution, I will relapse. Now it says perhaps there will never be a full answer to these questions. Opinions vary considerably as to why the alcoholic, why the addict reacts differently from normal people. We are not sure why, once a certain point is reached, little can be done for him. And what that means is hopelessness. Once a certain point is reached, we are hopeless. It says we cannot answer the riddle. Now I want to talk about the whys for a second here, because that why is important. I came to the rooms and I was stuck with why. If there is a loving God, why do I have this illness of addiction? Why can't I, why? Is it because, I'm pale? I'm a little too ginger. I didn't get enough vitamin D. Is that the why? Is the why because I'm in Canada? Is the what, is it because of my genetics? Is it because my family of origin? Why am I an addict? But the important thing to understand is the why does not matter. It's a little like but I will tell you what my answer to my why is. It is a little like I've been lost in the desert. And like I said, I'm ginger. I'm not doing well with that direct sunlight. That's my experience. I am lost in the desert, and I am struggling. And it's the sun is beating down on me, and man, I am not doing well. And when I'm going around in circles, and I can't find a way out, and then the cold night begins to settle in. And you see, the thing about the desert, as hot as it is during the day, is as cold as it is in the night. And I've run out of food. I've run out of water. I know I'm not going to make it through that cold, long night. And by some miracle of miracles, I am given a map. And that is this book, Alcoholics Anonymous. It is not the treasure, but it is the map to take me to that treasure. And in that moment, it is far more important that I use this map to get my butt out of the desert. I'm not going to survive out there much longer than I try to use it to pontificate on how I got out there in the first place. And let's be honest, it would be a real puzzler as to how I got out there. Some of you guys know I'm in a wheelchair. That thing is not doing well in sand. You know what I'm saying? But if you're wondering why, I'll tell you the answer that I have found, the reason that I am an addict, the reason some of the things that have happened to me. And I'm talking about some of the things that happened during childhood, some of the things that happened to me in my active addiction, and some of the painful things that have happened to me in my sobriety. The answer to that why, where I found that, was sitting down with another addict and working with them. And in that moment, the answer to my why was found when I could say, yes, me too. Yes, me too, I felt like that. Yes, me too, I did that thing. Yes, me too, that happened to me. Yes, me too, I know what it is like to go back to it again and again and again. And this is how I got freedom from it. This map. And you see, the reason I'm an addict has nothing to do with my family of origin, nothing to do with my genetic disposition. And if that's your experience, that's your experience. But the reason I am an addict is because I get to sit down with other addicts and I get to offer them this way out and this way of life. And that has given my life meaning and purpose beyond anything that I could have ever imagined. And so that's why I'm an addict. Your reasons might be different, but that's mine. So it says, we know that while the addict keeps away from drink or drug, as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. We are equally positive that once he takes any alcohol, any coke, any, whatever the mind-altering substance is, something happens into his system. Something happens both in the bodily and mental sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. Let's have a look at our experience as addicts. Once I take whatever that substance is, whether it's crack, whether it's coke, whether it's pot, whether it's alcohol, whatever it is, whether it's uppers or downers, once I take it, does it take me? And off I go, and I need more. And the more that I use, the more that I need to use, and I can't control the amount that I take. Is that my experience? Is it that experience has abundantly confirmed in my own life that I have the allergy of the body? So it goes on to say, these observations would be academic and pointless. So it would be interesting to know, oh goodness, that little Ginger Page seems like she can't smoke crack like a lady. That would be interesting. It would be something to study, but it wouldn't be important. It says, if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. My main problem is not that once I start, I cannot control it. My main problem is that I continue to go back to it again and again and again. That is my main problem. I have the obsession of the mind. I have some other allergies. I seem to be allergic to peppers and onions. And I will tell you, peppers and onions, onions create a nausea effect, and peppers create that same thing with burning. So it's like a disaster, but extra spicy, like an extra spicy disaster. And I promise you, I have never had to get a 12-step sponsor for onions and peppers. I've never had to make 90 and 90 onion and pepper anonymous. I've never had to do it. I've never had to go to an onion and pepper specialist. I've never, like somebody that's really like, oh girl, what happened to you in child? No, it's just, you know what I do? If somebody's like, you want to go Chipotle? I'm like, no, thank you. No, thank you. My ability to not have onions and peppers has an effect. But when it comes to alcohol, when it comes to crack, when it comes to the other substances that I was using, my desire, my need, my want had absolutely no effect. So my main problem is that I continue to go back to it. That is my main problem. If you ask him why he started out on that last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make light in the havoc an alcoholic's drinking bout creates. So I can show up to you with, man, I have had some stuff. I have had some life. And it's like, man, if you were feeling the way that I was feeling, you'd have to get loaded too. But then when you look at the results of me getting loaded, it just makes it worse. So there's a certain plausibility. But the thing that I am using to treat my pain is only making my pain worse. And it says they sound like the philosophy of the man who, having had a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so he can't feel the ache. It's been funny. I have had all week, I've had significant migraines. And then today, it's not a migraine, it's a tension headache because my shoulders and neck were so tight from the migraine. So I got an extra headache. Woo! And I will let you know that at no point was I like, you know what the solution to this is? Let me get the hammer out, let me go. Woo, that's the answer. I'm like, I will have some quiet in the dark time, please. That's what I was after. But that's what it is. The thing that I am using to treat my headache is making the headache worse. And so what do we got to do? We've got to treat the headache. And the treatment for the headache is the spiritual awakening. We're going to treat that spiritual malady, that thing that is at the depth of my soul, the restless, irritable, discontent, the emptiness, the loneliness, that feeling that who I am is not enough. Man, we have got to treat that because that is what is fueling the obsession of the mind. And just to be very clear, we treat that with the spiritual awakening. And how we have a spiritual awakening is the 12 steps. That's how we get there. So I've been busy hitting myself in the head with a hammer. This'll help. I mean, I could take some paracetamol. I think that's the name of Tylenol in the UK. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, I'm getting my UK names all right. Yeah, if only I had a reason to talk about aubergine or courgette. I don't, but yeah, zucchini and eggplant for those those in North America. Alrighty. That was a tangent I don't have time for. So if you draw this fallacious, which is like false, are you out of your mind? This fallacious reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic, he will laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk. So when people say, Paige, Every time you relapse, you're just making your situation worse. Every time you drink, every time you smoke crack, man, it's just making it worse. I'm just going to blow you off, or I am going to get irritable. I'm going to get defensive. I'm going to tell you, you don't know me. You don't know what I mean? Back off. And it says once in a while, he may tell the truth. And the truth, strange to say, is he usually has no idea why he took that first drink than you have. I am baffled as to why I would go back to it. Some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time, but in their hearts, they really don't know why they do it. I can show up with excuses, and I can tell you it was this, it was that, it was this, and was that, but I really don't know. And that's terrifying. I don't know why I'm going back to this thing. And it says, once this malady, now the word malady just means illness, sickness. Once this illness that is addiction has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. I am as confused as my loved ones is why I go back to it. I can't tell them that, but I don't know why I'm doing it. There is the obsession, and when we talk about the obsession, we are talking about the mental obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game. Somehow, someday, I will be able to control it and enjoy it. Somehow, someday, I will be able to drink like a lady, smoke like a lady, that I will be able to just do it responsibly. But they often suspect they're down for the count. There is a deep sense that, man, this thing has me, and I'm not going to be able to get free from it. Does that sound familiar? It goes on to say how true this is, few realize in a vague way. In a vague way, their families and friends sense that these drinkers are abnormal. Abnormal is not a judgment. 9 out of 10 people in the world can drink or use mind-altering substances responsibly. They can have 3 drinks and leave it alone. And 9 out of 10 people, man, if they say they're not going to do it, they don't do it again. But we're the people that depart from that normal. I cannot control it. And I continue to go back to it again and again and again, despite the fact that it is ruining my life. So it says, but everybody hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will rouse himself from his lethargy and assert his power of will. Give your head a shake, wake up, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But the truth, and it says the tragic truth is that if the man be a real alcoholic, be a real addict, the happy day may not arrive. You see, I went to university, and I had to pay back about $40,000 worth of student loans. And so and I don't want to use my degree. I have no interest in it. So you unfortunately also get this fun fact, whether you want it or not. Now you can just go la 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 and ignore me. But here's the thing. Pulling yourself up by your bootstraps was originally an expression that was in reference to doing the impossible. For an addict to stay sober on their own power, it is impossible. For an addict, there are people who are hard drinkers, hard users, and they can do it. Wonderful, amazing for them. But for those of us who have this illness, it is impossible for us to stay sober without a spiritual awakening that we grow and deepen over time. It is not possible. Also, when you boot up your computer, that bootstrap process is named after that idiom and in reference to that. So that's just a fun little fact based on me having to pay back $40,000 to student loans. You're welcome. It's the gift of my financial amends that keeps on giving. And if you're like, I don't want this information, I apologize profusely. Alrighty. So it says, the tragic truth, if the man be a real alcoholic, the happy day may not arrive. He has lost control. At a certain point in the drinking or the using of every alcoholic or addict, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop is of absolutely no avail. And this is what is baffling for us. I want to stay sober. I need to stay sober. I have to stay sober. I was warned that if I don't stay sober, I'm going to ruin my family, my life, my health. I'm not going to survive. And none of that has any power to keep me sober. It says this tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected. This situation has arrived. Man, there's a lot of times where it's like, man, I hope it's not me. I hope I'm not that bad. I show up here and I'm hoping I got diet alcoholism or diet addiction, and I only have to do like CA light. You know what I mean? Potential. You know, I have the potential. I don't got the real deal thing. But the truth is, if I have this illness, I don't have the ability to stay sober on my own power. And we can look at our experiences and all the ways and means that we tried to stay sober on our own power. And if it wasn't sufficient, that's a sign that I have this illness. It goes on to say, now I'll point out, this is in italics. Italics are important. Now, for many years, I would tell you, back in the day, they had to pay extra for italics. That's not true. They didn't have to pay it. Right around the time this book was written, they had figured out a way to print in a much cheaper way, so you didn't have to pay extra for italics. But that myth that I shared for a long time was quite pervasive, and the reason why it was pervasive is, man, I'm somebody that doesn't pay attention to almost anything. You know what I mean? I'm not interested in any of this. Like, just give me the good stuff. I want the path of least resistance. So we would talk about italics being vitally important. And the reason these italics are important, or the reason we would share this, is so that we pay attention, because we are having this super important information that I might want to miss. So it says the fact, not theory, not wish, but the fact is that most alcoholics, most addicts, for reasons yet obscure, for we don't know why, have lost the power of choice in drink. And this is important. The lack of choice is the obsession of the mind. If I do not have the ability to choose whether I will drink or not, whether I will use or not, what that means is I will use again. I will relapse. If I don't have the ability to choose, I am going to relapse. A relapse is inevitable and is imminent. And it says our so-called willpower. So I'm going to exert my will. I'm going to lift all the resistance and the will that I have. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. It's not there. My willpower can't stop myself from taking that first drink, drug, hit, hoot, that first one. It says we are enabled at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. And so if you've ever heard that saying, play the tape to the end, what that is saying is that we are not capable of it. So if you're here today and man, you tried to play that tape to the end, it's saying it's not going to work. Now keep in mind, it'll work for a little bit, but it's a little like having a 60-40 parachute. You know, like a parachute that's a little like, it'll work 60% of the time. If you got a parachute that's going to work 60% of the time, are you jumping out that airplane? And also, if your answer is yes, again, I want to reiterate, we have a solution. You don't need to feel the way that you're feeling, right? I'm not interested in a fire extinguisher that's like, yeah, it's kind of loosey-goosey, 80-20 success rate. No, I need it to work when it will work every single time. And when we talk about playing the tape to the end, and don't worry, I'm aware of the time. I'm going to wrap up with this paragraph. On the top, I got you. I have this thing where it's like, all right, Paige, if you could just play the tape to the end. And so what I do is I start to imagine what the tape is, and I start to imagine it at the end. And so what happens is I imagine that I am on a grand piano, and I'm in a red sequin evening nightgown. You know what I mean? One of those classy dresses. And some of you have already pegged that never in my freaking life would I ever wear something like that. But I'm sitting on that grand piano, and there's like a chandelier and a candelabra, and I've got a glass of, some fancy alcohol, you know, like a champagne or a Chardonnay. And I've got those long, elegant gloves and one of those super long cigarette holders, you know, those classy ones. And there's a crack pipe in there, but you know what I mean? I am playing the tape to the end, baby. And what's the reality? What's the reality is I'm pissing my pants behind a dumpster smoking crack with a gentleman I just met. Now, some of you might peg I called him a gentleman. Well, I know, I just met the guy. I shouldn't pass judgment, you know? And the truth is, like, I've got to move the technology forward. I am incapable of playing the tape to the end. It doesn't work. In fact, it's a little like, you guys remember Discman? It's like I got a Discman and I'm walking around, and you guys remember that CD player, it would skip. I've got this strange mental blank spot and I can't see the truth. Or if you guys remember a little later than that, when you were downloading songs off LimeWire, or like, you know, try to pirate them and you give your family computer all those viruses. Some of you know what I'm talking about. And the song wouldn't even be the song. I am incapable. And it says we are without defense against the first drink. And if I have no defense against the first drink, that means there is nothing that I can do to stop it. And if there is nothing that I can do to stop it, what that means is that I will relapse. A relapse is inevitable and it is imminent, and there is nothing that I can do in and of myself, in and of my power, to stop it. And I'm aware of the time, so what I'll do is I will leave it there. Thank you so much.